Starting off the new year, this is the very first Sunday. I'm continuing in this sermon series that I started last week on renewal. And when you start thinking about being renewed or being involved in renewal, there's some different aspects that you got to remember. First of all, renewal has this idea of resuming or picking up again something that you had done in the past. You can renew by starting over or recommitting and all those kind of things. Also, there's this idea that it's doing something that gives fresh life to your life. You know, it refreshes, it's an extension of what you're trying to do for a longer time. There's this idea that, hey, I want to renew, and so I want to make this fresh again. I want to recommit and give myself to the Lord. And in a very real sense, that the new year is always a great opportunity, the perfect time to do just that, to get back to doing the things we ought to do, to refresh our lives and our commitment to the Lord, to recognize, hey, I want to renew my commitment to the Lord for the rest of my life. With that in mind, sometimes we have to look back. Sometimes we have to assess. Sometimes we have to recommit. 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, Paul says it like this. He says, examine yourselves to see if your faith is genuine. Test yourselves. Surely you know that Jesus Christ is among you. If not, you have failed the test of genuine faith. Paul says, hey, I want you to look at your life. I want you to examine your faithfulness. I want you to look and see how you're doing. Evaluate whether you are with Jesus, getting closer and closer to Him, or whether you're walking farther and farther away from Him. It's a call for us to walk in our faith in a way that would draw us into a greater relationship with Jesus and a greater reflection of that relationship in this world. I was thinking about all the distractions. I found this story in Salzburg, Austria. They have implemented some creative measures to protect pedestrians. The city's Board of Traffic Safety have found out that nearly 40% of the injured pedestrians in their city were involved in accidents because they were distracted by their smartphone. Pedestrians are involved in more accidents, according to the survey they found out, the study, involved in more accidents in that city than anyone else on the streets, including cyclists, people who drive mopeds, car drivers. Pedestrians were involved in the most accidents. They categorize these pedestrians as smartphone zombies. And it's become a common problem in high traffic areas. Honolulu, by the way, recently signed a law that bans pedestrians from looking at their smartphones while they're crossing the street, which I think is a pretty good idea. Don't look at it while you're crossing the street. But in Austria, they found a more novel way to deal with the issue of these distracted pedestrians. They've installed large airbags around street sign posts and lamp posts, urging the pedestrians to pay attention. The bags kind of serve a double purpose. They actually will protect you if you run into a lamppost as you're looking at your phone, but they have a message printed on them, and this is the message, and I thought it was great. Here's the message, roughly translated. It says, right on the airbag, it says this: will the next car also be so well padded? Will the next car also be so well padded? Here's the thing. I wonder if we've not kind of become zombies, smartphone zombies in our world today, and distracted by so many different things. Can't even make it through the sermon without looking at our phone. I know you all are looking at the Bible app. I realize that. But for some other people in some other churches, how many days have we gotten to the end of, and we've wondered to ourselves, what did I really accomplish for the Lord? Did I even speak up for Him? Have I even talked to the Lord at all this entire day. As we start off 2024, I want us to be challenged to live a life that is focused, a life where making disciples is a priority, a life where stepping out farther and farther with the Lord is something we do daily, a life of increased service of those who are in need. And for that to happen, we must ask ourselves, do I look like Jesus? And am I looking more and more like him? Do I look more like Jesus than I did yesterday or last month or last year? I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Alex Honnold. I think that's how you say his last name. They brought a movie out a few years back called Free Solo. Alex Honnold, in June of 2017, scaled El Capitan, which is a 3,000-foot granite rock face in Yosemite National Park. He was 33 years old at the time, and that El Capitan is considered the most challenging wall in the world by many. But he's the first one to ever climb it free solo, which means with no equipment, no ropes, nothing except for him and the rock. At one point, he was hanging by his thumbs 1,000 feet above the ground. I don't think my thumbs are that strong, but nonetheless. He lives most of the year out of a van, a lifestyle known as dirtbagging, which he calls an intentional choice to prioritize his vocation. Alex says that I want to climb in the best places in the world. That is my focus. So I'm willing to give up having stability, having a shower, having whatever in order to climb the way I want to climb. He goes on to say, I am probably more intentional with my way of life, my way of living, than virtually anybody. I have made clear choices about what I find value in, what risks I am willing to take. And I am doing exactly what I love to do. It's very easy for someone sitting on the couch at home to condemn me as crazy or as stupid, but I can justify all my choices. Can you say the same about your life? He says the way he's living is exactly how he wants to live, and it is, in fact, a choice. It is him making a visible, intentional choice. I want to climb mountains, so I'm going to live this way so that I can do it. I wonder if his comments aren't pretty challenging, or at least shouldn't be challenging for us as Christ followers. I mean, aren't we serving the greatest quest and the greatest Lord in the universe? Can you see it in my tenacity? Can you see it in my devotion? Can you see it in my focus? Today I want us to look at, this is our text, Romans 12, verse 1. I want us to look at that idea. We need to give it all for the Lord. So Romans 12, 1. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. One verse, and yet in this one verse, we are challenged. We are called to commitment. We are called to live a life that is exactly like Alex, completely committed and focused on our cause. By the way, my text in the New Living Translation says, and so, but many of your texts would say, therefore. And so Paul gets to 12:1, and he says, this is the action you ought to take. But he's reminding them of everything that went on before in Romans. He says, because of all that God has done for you, you ought to be doing this as you live out for God. He says, because of all that God is doing, you ought to be challenged to be transformed, be completely different than everyone else around you. In response to what God has done, there should be a change in our lives. In fact, just to give you a few of the things that are mentioned in Romans, in chapter 3, God's grace through Jesus' sacrifice makes us right even though we're sinners. So he says, hey, you were sinners, but because of God's grace, through Jesus' sacrifice, you're now right with God. Chapter 5, he says Jesus died for us when we were his sinful enemies so that we could have a relationship with God. Chapter 6, it says that we receive new lives through participating in the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Chapter 8, you could just do all out of chapter 8. Chapter 8 tells us we're no longer condemned. It tells us that we're filled with God's Spirit. It reminds us that we've been declared children of God. That all things will work out for the good of those who are called by God. And that God is for us. In view of all that God has done for us, and that's just a little bit of what it says in the first 11 chapters of Romans. In view of all of that God is doing for us, we need to be offering our bodies as living sacrifice. That's what Paul says. Is that what you and I are doing? Are we offering ourselves, our bodies, as living sacrifices or not? And you might be saying, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. What does God really mean when he calls me to be a living sacrifice? And that would be a good question. We need to know what he's asking us to do, right? So what does it mean to be a living sacrifice? To offer my body as a living sacrifice? Well, the first thing it means is living means living. I know that's real deep right there. But I want you to think about the Old Testament sacrifices. The Old Testament sacrifices, they were brought, they were supposed to be without defect or without blemish. By the way, you might be saying, well, I can't do that. I've got all sorts of defects and blemishes, all sorts of sin in my life. Well, that may be true and is true, but because of the sacrifice of Jesus, that's all been cleaned away. So you stand before God righteous on Jesus' account. But when those sacrifices were given, what happened to them? They were consumed. They were burned up. It was a one-time deal. You gave a dove, gone. I mean, you couldn't re-sacrifice the same dove. But for you and me, it's a completely different way of doing it. We don't come and offer our bodies to the Lord one time. We come and offer our bodies to the Lord day after day after day. In fact, Jesus says in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, he says to the crowd, if any of you wants to be my followers, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Jesus says if you want to be a disciple, you got to turn from your selfishness, but you have to also take up your cross daily. Not one time, not just once, but day after day after day after day. And in so doing, you need to follow me. Go where I go. Do what I did. Love as I loved. Serve whom I served. Vance Havner said this. I thought it was great. He said, God wants our bodies as living sacrifices, not corpses. God wants you as a living sacrifice. He doesn't want you as a corpse. By the way, this is off the topic. But if you're sitting here and you look like a corpse, there's something wrong with that too. See, God is looking for you and me to continuously commit ourselves to him. He's calling on you and me to die to ourselves each and every day, to surrender completely. It is something we have to choose to do over and over and over again. And it's not just even in the morning we say, Lord, I give you my life. It's every moment of the day we continue to say, Lord, I give you my life. Lord, I surrender my life. Lord, I give you everything I've got. 1 Corinthians 9, Paul says this. He says, all athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away. But we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I am not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. Every step, every decision, every day, we need to keep our eye on the goal. We need to focus firmly on the realization that you and I are representing Jesus in our world, and we're supposed to be not only looking more and more like him, but bringing more and more people to him. So that's the first thing. If you're going to offer your body as a living sacrifice, the first thing you need to do is it needs to be living, everyday living sacrifice. The second thing we need to understand about this is that it is proclaimed our worship, and our worship is something that we are constantly involved in. Now, we often, if I was to ask someone, what is the definition of worship? Some people would come and they'd say, well, it's that singing we do on a Sunday morning. Or some people would say, well, it's all the things that we do on a Sunday morning as a congregation. And that would be worship, but that is not the totality of worship. Worship is so much more than just that. It is our lives lived to bring glory to God every single day. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, it says, and you are living stones that God is building into his spiritual temple. What's more, you are his holy priests. Through the mediation of Jesus Christ, you offer spiritual sacrifices that please God. That's us. We are God's temple. We're where his presence resides, and we're his priests, facilitating worship, offering up our living sacrifice daily so that others can see his glory. We don't have to go to a certain place on a certain day to perform the duty of priests. Every day, everywhere we go, we are to be bringing God acceptable and honoring worship. That's our lives. Our lives ought to be a life-providing, producing worship. Every day we should take the opportunity to glorify God with our lives. In Romans 6, verse 13, I should say, says, Paul says, don't let any part of your body become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Instead, give yourselves completely to God, for you were dead, but now you have new life. So, use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right for the glory of God. He says, don't use your body to do sinful things. Use your body to do those things that bring glory to God each and every day. That's our lives. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Miles McPherson is a preacher, and one day he was walking through the church building. He said, I walked out of my office, and a guy I had never met was just getting off the elevator. And he was about 6'4" and at least 250 pounds. He wore cut-off jeans and a sweatshirt. His body was all tatted up, and we walked down the hall together. And he told me as we walked down the hall that he was going to his first ministry meeting that day, and he was really nervous about it. And I asked him, nervous? How come you're nervous? He said, well, Pastor Miles, you always encourage us to do something, so I figured I need to do something, and I want to serve the Lord. Now, since our church has many outreach ministries, I asked him, well, what ministry are you going to? He says, I'm going to the knitting ministry. He said, well, actually, I don't knit. I crochet. Now, here's this huge guy, looks like an NFL tackle, and he's nervous about joining the ministry that makes blankets and hats for hospitalized children. Curious, I asked him, well, how did you learn how to crochet? He said, well, I was in the Hells Angels for 12 years. I learned how to crochet in prison, and I know it's one thing I can do for the Lord. Just then, the lady who heads up the knitting ministry walked toward us, and she gave me a quick hi, and then she asked this former Hells Angel, are you Jim? She gave him a big grin and took his hand, and I watched as they walked down the hall together. It may not seem like a unique ability to crochet, but when you package it with his life, the ripple effect can push countless others out of their comfort zones, so that they step up and stand out the way God designed them to as well. He said, but imagine for a moment if Jim was worrying about what others would think about him crocheting for Jesus, and he didn't do it at all. What about you? What gift can you bring? What What opportunity? What ministry can you be involved in? Where can you serve? Because that's part of our worship to God. How we live for the Lord is worship. It's an opportunity to point people to the greatness of the God we serve, to surrender to Him, to allow Him also to work through them and their weaknesses. Yes, we need to gather on Sundays to worship together. That's extremely important. But yes, we need to constantly live a life of worship. It isn't one or the other. It's both of those things that we need to be involved in. See, as we start our renewal year, it's important that we understand that it's never a one-time decision. It is always an all-the-time decision. It's a daily decision. Am I going to give myself to service? Am I going to give myself to worship? Am I going to live for the Lord? Am I going to live for myself? 2 Corinthians chapter 4 says, that is why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are being renewed every day. For our present troubles are small and won't last very long. Yet they produce for us glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. So we don't look at the troubles we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen. For the things we see now will soon be gone, but the things we cannot see will last forever. Where's my focus? Where's your focus fixed? What is my desire? What is your desire and goal? Who am I trying to please with my life, myself or God? Jim Brandick, when he was 62 years old, was told that he had pancreatic cancer and would only live a year. Thinking he only had a single year, he decided to get the most out of that year. So he quit his job, stopped paying his mortgage, used up his savings. He gave gifts to family and friends. He took vacations. He frequently ate out. And he did everything that he thought would be enjoyable in life. And when the spending spree was over, he had successfully depleted all of his finances. They were all gone. But what did it matter to him? He wasn't going to need it anyway. Well, a year later, Brandick returned to the medical to a medical appointment. And there he was alarmed to learn that his, quote, cancer was merely an inflammation of the pancreas. And instead of facing death, he was now facing life, a life without any money. This is what he said. He says, when they tell you you've got a limited time and everything, you do what you can to enjoy life. But he says, I'm really pleased that I've got a second chance on life, but if you haven't got no money, after all, which is my fault, I spent it all, they should pay some of it back. So what he's trying to do is get the hospital to pay him for his misdiagnosis. But as I read that story, I thought to myself, what would I have done? What would you have done? You got a year to live, Todd. Go do anything you want because it's the last one you got. Would I make the most out of my time for myself, or would I make the most out of my time for the calling that God has given me? See, the challenge of renewal, a renewed commitment, a renewed surrender, a renewed focus is that we would make whatever time we have, whether it's a year, a week, a day, or 10 decades, whatever amount of time, that we would use it to focus on God's kingdom and sharing the good news with those who don't know Him. So here's my question. Will you sacrifice daily? You know, your neighbor, you need to talk to them about Jesus. You need to go over there because they've had some kind of tragedy and you just need to be a comfort and pray with them. Are you willing to give up your leisure time or your work time to talk to them? Or you notice there's people around you that are hurting, that you could minister to, that you have the ability to help in some form or fashion? Are you going to get out there and do that? Are you going to expend the energy you have for the Lord or for yourself? Will you worship constantly? Will your mouth be overflowing with praises for God? Or are you going to have a mouth that overflows about the sports team or your hobby or whatever? Are you going to display Christ-like love and lead people to Him? Or are you going to spend most of your time worrying about yourself? See, renewal means I'm going to do it for God rather than for me. I've done a lot for me. Now it's time for me to do so much more, especially in view of what He has done for me. Will you pray with me? God, I thank You for all You bless us with. We come to this new year and this challenge of Romans 12, verse 1, and I pray, Lord, that we will offer ourselves, every part of us, every day of our living, to be a sacrifice and to be worship. Both of those things need to be reflected in our life. And so, Lord, if there's things getting in the way of that, I pray that You would remove them from our lives. Whatever it is, I pray that it would be gone. I pray that we would do things the way You want us to, that would make a priority out of Your things, building Your kingdom and changing the way we look in this world so that we can reflect Your Son to greater and greater degree each and every day. I pray that every day we will choose today and every moment of that day to live for You, to bring You glory, to reflect who You are in this world. Lord, thank You for this challenge, and I pray, Lord, that as much as You've been doing through each of us, that with our renewed commitment to You, that You would continue and even do more to show the world who You are through our lives. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.